All right. Anyways, good to meet you, man. By the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So my name is Griffin. Obviously, you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just found your stuff, like political stuff's going viral, obviously, all the time now. And since you do quite a bit of that, or at least a fair bit of it, um, yeah, saw your stuff, started following, and super interesting. Not too many people talk about Canadian real estate, so
Yeah, it's kind of a niche subject for sure. I think the reason why we're even hopping on this call, Griffin, is he's been in YouTube for a long time. I've seen your stuff like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I think. So it was funny when you
yeah,
messaged us on
totally.
the Instagram there, where I was like, oh, I know this guy, and yeah, basically, what do you do? Who are you? And yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, so like I said, my name is Griffin Milks. I'm from the Ottawa region, so the capital of Canada, actually on the Quebec side though. So it's a dual city, kind of split by a river. So I live on the Quebec side, which kind of gives me a different perspective on the real estate market here because it's literally Quebec versus Ontario. So very, very different markets, even though they share the same sort of amenities. I have been doing YouTube now for over 5 years, but full time about 3 years. I actually quit my job at the government back during the pandemic. It was something I always wanted to do, and then had the opportunity to do that when I actually my channel started taking off, and then also throughout that period investing in real estate, and now have a nice little portfolio and doing some like really active projects, which is going great. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talking about real estate
All
and
things real
whatever
estate.
else you want to
Yeah.
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. I think like where we always talk about on Instagram is like where Canada is heading and kind of like the troublesomes that we see, the bad advice out there, and just taking a different perspective. I think too many people, especially real estate agents, just hop on this bandwagon that real estate only goes up. There's no investment. Sorry, there's no risk. The best time to buy was yesterday, and if you miss the boat, you're screwed, sort of thing. Which I think has been, in a sense, it's been kind of true since people always say, well, you're just going after Justin Trudeau, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what political party is in. It matters that the fact is that house prices have doubled since 2015 in Canada. And if you think about house prices doubling, it means that it's doubled on leveraged money. So money people have borrowed. So people have made a lot of money if you've got into the market 2015 or sooner. So I guess
For sure.
where we always talk about is kind of the irresponsibility of the government. And, a part that always bothers me is that they just can't say, hey, they just capped foreign students. They can't say, hey, that was our fault. We should have been way on top of that. They kind of just make it seem like, oh, now we're coming to save you when they created the problem. So I guess my long-winded question here is like, what do you see going on right now politically with Canada and especially with a focus on housing?
Politically. So usually I really don't try to actually provide like my particular political insight on why things going on. I just kind of react maybe sometimes on my channel to what I think that could impact even my own investments or my viewers. So from the standpoint of how do I think the current political landscape is affecting real estate? Of course it has affected it. Now at this point though, I always just try to look at the longer game of how is this going to affect my acquisitions and how am I able to actually move within this market and still make a profit because like you said, yeah, the price of properties has doubled for most people. It's on leveraged money and stuff, which is also still the case for me and my partner. By the way, I invest with my partner 50-50 on everything. So for us, we're always trying to look at how are we able to still pull a profit despite these really difficult times. That's obviously going to be quite difficult or different, I should say, than someone who's entering the market to be an investor, or even worse, someone who wants to buy a house to be their primary residence, which, yeah, now um, it's completely impossible for most people under the age of 35 who don't make 150K alone or with a partner to actually get into the market. So swimming back to that, I'm not necessarily going to comment on how I think Justin Trudeau is doing well or not well. I'm not a liberal, straight up. I'll just say that. So obviously we can get information from that as to what I think that the current party and leadership has done to this country. But you can either look at it from a really bleak standpoint of like everything's going to shit, which is really easy to do in Canada right now. You go online and everything's just negative. Or even though that is usually the case, just trying to move on and try to take advantage of Canada that still has tons of opportunities. You just need to think outside of the box and do it in a different manner. Just going out and buying a cash flowing triplex for, 300K isn't doable anymore, but how are you able to actually implement something that will work? So it doesn't really answer your question fully, but it's a good starting point for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, no, it is a
Yeah.
good starting point. So I guess when you say, a cash flowing triplex, what do you focus on, and what areas are you buying in?
So that's the thing, right? Like talking about real estate across Canada, like Canada is such a large country with fully different cultures, let alone individual markets. Like Vancouver has absolutely nothing to do with Montreal or Ottawa or Toronto, even though we like to lump everything together. So for me, I've always bought everything in Gatineau, everything. And the reason being for that is quite simple. Definitely very lucky to have come from this region. So I know it like literally like the back of my hand. I've grew up here my whole life. And that's invaluable, knowing your market. I've had opportunities to invest outside, but I've always been weary of it because I simply don't know the market. So for me, knowing how involved it is real estate investing and how my team of real estate brokers, property manager, contractor, all that, thinking about going and starting that once again in a market I don't know is honestly kind of off-putting. It's not something I won't ever do, but for now, as I'm building up the foundation of my portfolio, that would be like starting back to square one, like literally, because my team is everything. Like I just kind of oversee stuff with my partner, but if it wasn't for everyone else, I wouldn't be where I am today. So to answer your question, I've only ever invested in Gatineau and triplexes now. It's definitely a cheaper market than anywhere in Ontario or BC, but it's still a lot more expensive than it was, like you said, 3 years ago, literally, right before the pandemic. So like a triplex now that needs tons of work is still going to be $500,000, which probably seems like nothing to you, but a brand new one that's optimized is going to go for $1 million,
Wow.
so
Yeah, yeah.
so no
Well,
so
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, you're right. I hear 500K. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good for a triplex. But like you said, it needs work and stuff like that. So when you start looking at the
That's
numbers,
like a triplex that needs 200K at work.
yeah, and then you have to look
So,
at the tenant base in Gatineau. So what's that like? Like what's going on in Gatineau where you're like you feel confident in the job market, the economy there, and it makes you want to buy real estate.
yeah, people who are gonna listen to this who aren't from the capital region are definitely gonna roll their eyes, and I totally get it, but this area is it's backed by JT, always has been even before JT was in power. It's backed by him. The average income here is much higher than anywhere else. Like average income per capita is much higher here than anywhere else in Canada, really, on a relative basis for everyday people because of the government jobs, which is crazy. Truly, like I said, I used to work for the government, and I saw that's a whole other can of worms as to the efficiency and all that. But the bottom line is hundreds of thousands of people in this region of 1.2 million work for the federal government
Oh
and
wow, I didn't
make
even know that.
70K a year more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I don't really want to get into politics because it just
yeah,
gets my blood boiling and it's very
yeah.
polarizing. But yes, last I checked, I'm pretty sure 300,000 people who live in this region work for the government of Canada, and these aren't people making 50K. This is
Yeah.
75 to 150 full benefits, full pension, and work from home most of the time. So
Sign me up.
so as a result of that, yeah, no, literally. So as a result of that, well, the real estate market is a lot more stable here than it could be in other regions because that's the industry here. It's that construction and accounting. Accountants for all the construction
All the construction.
companies and the people, who work at the government. So that's really one of the reasons why I've invested here on top of really just knowing this region really well myself. Um, and how is it though? Like tenant base, it's mostly immigrants. Honestly, like when I started investing, it was um, I'm not going to say like Canadians, but it was people who grew up here essentially. And now I would say 95% of the tenants that we're getting applications for and then also accepting are people who are new to the country in the past a year or two, literally. So
Okay.
it's a very changing dynamic, 100%. Yeah.
Who are you seeing come through? Is it are they coming to work for the government? Like what kind of jobs are they scooping up when they come? Like not non-permanent residents,
You
I'm guessing.
know, yeah, the jobs themselves, I wouldn't be able to tell you because most of all our leasing is done by a leasing agent. So we're not the ones like interviewing everyone and doing the credit checks, just to be transparent here. However, it's a lot of in Quebec because it's a French-speaking province, it's a lot of immigrants from African countries as well as Haiti. So they come here and then they speak French. So they just move here instead of Ontario or whatever because they're
Okay.
French native
Yeah, yeah, makes
speaking
sense.
individuals. Yeah. So it's a very different, like, for example, in the GTA, I know it's a lot more, like Indian or Middle Eastern people who go there.
For sure.
That's really not the case in Quebec, like at all. At all.
Yeah.
There's no Indian people who come and live
Mm.
here at all.
Yeah, yeah. A
Yeah.
big part of that is Brampton for sure. I think that's a big appeal for a lot of people, and I feel like yeah, if you're gonna move to Canada and you do speak French, like why would you come to Ontario really? Unless I guess if you went to Ottawa,
And
that's
the
an expense.
price of rent and real estate's cheaper. Sorry to cut you off,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
No, no, you're good.
it's
Yeah,
also quite a bit cheaper.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
let's say, for example, a two-bedroom in my region, not counting Ottawa, like a two-bedroom brand new that we will have done is maybe 1,700 bucks for a brand
Wow.
new build
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
that in the GTA is literally 3,500 bucks or more,
Yeah,
maybe,
you can see
So,
the gardener just out my window there. So this
oh, can I?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm in Fort York, so I'm right in the thick of things. But yeah, about a two bedroom, two bath is
Fort
is close
York.
to $3,200 a month. So it's not
There you
cheap, that's
go.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I think a big thing in Toronto too that we're seeing is about 50% of condo owners are investors. And investors usually
Okay.
take variable rates because it's easier to get out of the deal if you need to. Sorry, if you need to sell the place, there's less of a penalty usually. That was kind of like what
Yeah,
happened in the long run. But now, if you buy a condo right now in Toronto, you are so cash flow negative by the time you add in condo fees.
I bet.
Even you pay land transfer twice in Toronto. So I do
Oh, do
wonder
you?
if,
That's
yeah,
brutal.
yeah, yeah. So you pay
Wow,
provincial and you
okay.
pay city, and they just raised property tax in Toronto as well. So because they have a
They did
huge
the same
deficit.
here.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have a huge deficit here. So
So just for sake of example, like, let's say $1 million triplex, how much would the land transfer slash welcome tax be on that, give or take, ballpark, on like
uh,
$1 million property?
you're probably looking at 40K.
Oh shit. Okay, that's
Yeah,
massive. Yeah, that's
roughly
huge.
40K. Yeah.
Okay. No, here on $1 million, it'd probably be half that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty standard through like other places in Ontario. It's just Toronto has the double land transfer tax.
Okay.
So if you go out of
And
the
that was
city,
implemented recently?
no, that's been there for a while, but Toronto historically has cheaper
Okay.
property tax. Like if you go to, Oakville or Burlington, which is just outside Toronto, you'll just pay provincial
Yeah.
tax. So yeah, it'll be up on $1 million, it's about 20 grand
Okay.
roughly.
Yeah,
So
so pretty standard. Yeah.
yeah, pretty standard. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Because people you tell them that and they're like, "Oh my God, I got an extra 20K I just got to come up with to move into a house." And yeah,
Yeah.
housing is expensive.
So to come back to condos, because that's what we were talking about,
Mhm.
I've never like really analyzed condos that much because it's just never as an investment opportunity at least. I looked a bit when I was looking for a house, a place to live, but as an investment, never really looked into that. Just because one door, one tenant, really expensive on a relative basis per door. Like even over here, a condo's 300K minimum, and that's one door. So I usually look at it as a per door price type of thing. If you're buying a triplex and it's 900K, well, that's back to the 300K. However, you have added fixed costs that are split among 3 units, versus the one, although that doesn't really count for the condo because it's condo fees, but that also racks up a lot. So right now in Toronto, for example, if you were to buy a condo, you said it's highly cash flow negative. What are we talking here? Like losing 1,000, 2,000 a month
Yeah,
on one condo or?
you're probably losing about $1,500 a month right now. Like if you buy a one bedroom kind of in Toronto in Liberty Village, you can probably yield about 2,600. But by the time you get a mortgage, even with 20% down, you're
Yeah.
probably 4 grand all in. So you're losing about
Yeah, okay.
1,500
That's
bucks a
rough.
month. Yeah, with condo fees. So it is not an attractive place to invest, obviously, with these high interest rates. I guess, yeah, let's pivot there. What do you think about interest rates going forward and even inflation?
Yeah, so for interest rates, no one really knows ultimately. Speaking with my mortgage brokers, because I speak with them all the time, it's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning, where you were saying most real estate professionals like brokers, it's always the time to buy, you know. So in their industry, it's kind of the same thing. Well, it's, you know, it might come, but at the end of the day, no one ultimately knows. I think over the next year, they're probably going to start dropping from a commercial standpoint. They've already dropped a lot with CMHC. We just did a couple financings with CMHC, and they've come off like a point and a half. So that's obviously nice, because when it starts moving from a commercial standpoint, that's usually a precedent for residential as well. I think over the next year we'll probably see prices. Sorry, I think we'll start seeing interest rates coming back down. However, I think that's actually going to have a negative impact on most people's ability to buy. Right, like most people are always thinking that it's not the right time to buy. However, you know, 4 years ago we were buying overpriced properties. They were overpriced, to be quite honest, but let's say 600K for a triplex, but our rate was like 2%, versus
Right.
now we're buying one right now. The rate is more than double that. However, the property is like 500K, but the actual price on an ongoing monthly basis is more expensive. So I think as soon as Canada's in a really like fucked up place, as soon as the price points come, sorry, the interest rates come back down, I'm absolutely certain of the fact that the prices of actual real estate are going to start going back up again, which is just going to continue exacerbating the problem even further. Even though we've seen, you know, immigration levels starting to come to a halt. You were talking about the immigration of like foreign students and all that. Truly, I think damage for years has already been done from an actual supply and demand standpoint. It's
Yeah.
just, that's just the reality of things. Every time we put a place up for lease, we have dozens upon dozens of people applying, and this is in
Wow.
like a B market.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's crazy. I think
I think the problem is going to take years, and I don't think like there's no magic pill. You know, I don't think Polyev coming into power is going to change it anytime soon either.
no.
This is years of damage, seriously, and without being too bleak.
No, no, I think you're totally right. It's years and years of damage where, yeah, like you said, even if Polyev comes in, there's so much that needs to be done, right? Like you have to build so many homes. Like you let in 1.2 million people last year when we had a housing crisis, and we
Yeah,
only built about 240,000 homes. So, you look at those numbers, you're like, wow, that's like
yeah,
10x the amount of people we let in. And now what you see is political theater, right? You see people upset now. Canadians are like, I can't live anywhere. Like I can't rent anywhere. I can't do any of these things. And people always say to me, like,
yeah.
well, if you're bearish on real estate, then why do you sell it? And I'm not bearish on real estate. What I'm saying is I don't think that getting gains of 52% in 2 years is healthy. So I just say I think it's going to be a good store of
Well,
value.
yeah,
That's my opinion. I think it's
it's
going to be a
not
good store of
healthy
value.
for.
Mhm.
My apologies.
No, no, you
Continue
go
your
ahead. You go
thought.
ahead.
I was just saying 52% from a natural, it's not natural, but in terms of real estate terms, natural appreciation of 52K, definitely not healthy and
Mhm.
completely unsustainable, and has been. I think if you're someone like me, for example, who's coming in and doing massive renovations, then yeah, you can expect 100, 200% return in a year or two, but that's not investing anymore. It's just not. It's a business, pure and simple. So I don't even consider what I do the same game at all, because it's all a numbers game for me, and it's stuff that can be calculated. For the average person who, you know, bought a house back in 2010 and now it's doubled or more than double in value, that's definitely unsustainable, and has been, and we've seen it slow down. But yeah, the damage has definitely been done. And you said 200 and some K homes have been built, 1 point some mil have come in. Obviously, a lot of these people are going to be living together. It's not just individual people. So we can probably slash that down to the number of homes needed by at least half, because most people are at least two to four. And most immigrants actually have a lot more children than Canadians. But even still, the problem is definitely there. And especially when you're seeing Especially when you're seeing inefficiencies at the municipal level. Like, I definitely don't think that the federal government has done a good job. However, at the end of the day, it's a lot of municipalities that are making the issue a lot harder, right? I wouldn't call myself a full-blown developer, but I add units, I build places, so I'm trying to contribute to the problem. Well, sorry, to the solution.
Yeah.
And when it takes 2 years to get a permit, and I'm not making this up, when it takes 2 years to get a permit to add units to buildings or to get soil tests done, and then it goes back to the CMHC, and then it goes back to the ARC, and then it goes back to the city, and then blah blah blah, and it goes on and on. I mean, how are you supposed to be efficient? Like, literally, how are you supposed to be efficient? I know it's a lot better in Ontario, actually. You can like subdivide units a lot easier and stuff. In Quebec, it's brutal. And in a lot of cities as well. I made a video not too long ago looking at the average of, well, this was one of the elements speaking about looking at the average time it took in across Canada to get a building permit. It's a year and a half.
Wow.
That's massive. That's huge. So that completely, not only the money and capital standpoint for new people that are younger and wanting to get into the real estate market, and by real estate market I mean adding units, being a developer. It's such a turnoff to think, I have a long-term vision for this, so that's fine, but it's such a turnoff for most people who are wanting to get into real estate. They can't buy a turnkey property, it's cash flow negative, so then they might want to buy a turd that they can renovate, but then, or add units to, but then they're supporting the building for years and maybe going bankrupt in the time being. So what ends up happening in my region, for example, and it's like this in most of Canada, it's multimillionaires and people who have huge businesses and companies that build 80% of the stock.
Hmm.
There's no more just small people. So it's becoming really problematic. Like, it's really tough, and there's no short-term solution to it, and every municipality is different. So how can the federal government come in and help each individual municipality? That's a huge problem, and that needs solutions that I don't have answers to. But you would hope that the people in power, that's their job, would spend time thinking about it, but they just clearly don't. And whenever I think about it, it just gets me really pissed. And my girlfriend's like, "Man, you're so negative." And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to concentrate on what I can do, which
Yeah.
sounds really, selfish and self-interest. But at the end of the day, like, watching all this unfold, there's nothing I can do for that other than vote in the next election. All I can do is try to benefit my own business and the people that I'm impacting in my community,
Right.
which at the end of the day, that's what it is. Real estate, like, people hate on landlords and builders, but at the end of the day, it's these individuals providing housing and building more housing. So yeah, it's a really complicated and multifaceted issue for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point that people don't touch upon is, people are always like landlords are greedy, or blah blah blah, and all you're trying to do really is find an investment opportunity and create more units where people will build more homes. Like I always say,
Live.
no one's complaining about Apple stock and Apple making a bunch of money because you use their products and you love their products, right? You're getting their products, you're using them. You don't care that they have a $1 trillion valuation or whatever. And it's just
Exactly.
it should be the same thing with housing. Like, yeah, developers should make a lot of money if they provide a scarce resource. So the fact that you just
It's
said that,
because
no, you
Yeah,
go on.
it's because housing is a very sensitive topic because it's where people live. So at the end of the day, when people look at it from the standpoint of why should a landlord own 400 doors? There's an argument to be made there for sure, right? But at the end of the day, the entire housing stock, every single unit, every single apartment, every single house that anyone's sitting in right now was built by an entrepreneur, a developer at some point over the past 150 years in Canada. And to think that these individuals should do it for free or for no gain is crazy. The amount of risk, capital risk, stress, and opportunity cost that developers go through to build units is massive, and most people don't understand that. Um, you know, I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars on bad deals. I've made a lot more in different deals, and the goal is to continue building, but most people wouldn't be able to stomach that, and it's really hard. So going and being like developers are evil and shouldn't actually, pull a profit on what they're doing is crazy. That's what a capitalist economy is. It's
Yeah.
risk, reward, and putting yourself out there and actually trying to provide value. Pure, plain and simple. That's how I
100%.
see it.
Yeah, the government's not going to is not going to save us, right? They're not going to make enough housing where you have to get the private market involved. And to get the private market involved, you need to incentivize them to take risks like you're doing,
Exactly.
give them better loans, speed up permit times, all these things. Like you're still in an environment where permits are so slow. Like you just said 2 years, like 2 years of like opportunity
Yeah,
missed,
like 1 to 2
two
years.
years of,
For sure.
carry, overhead, all those things. Like most people can't conceptualize that. But when you start talking about it, most people would listen to that. They're like, I want to become a real estate investor. They'd hear you speak and they'd be like, okay, maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe buying the S&P 500 is a little bit easier every month than it is to become a
For
real
sure.
estate investor. So yeah, I think we need to get rid of that capitalist, oh, they're just out to steal from us, they're taking all the housing kind of argument. Especially if you're adding units. Like I think that's like so important as an investor. Like if you're taking a
Exactly.
duplex and making a triplex, like you just created one more home for a family to live in or a couple to live in. Like
Exactly.
that's an important thing for people to wrap their mind around.
Yeah, that's how I see it at least. So yeah, to get back to the root question here, I definitely think there's a lot of damage that can be done. I am not a politician, and I'm not paid to take time to think about this and try to implement solutions. But it definitely is frustrating and demoralizing seeing those clips, online, which to be fair, it might be biased depending on where you're seeing it from, and things might be cut in a certain way to to convey a certain narrative. But at the same time, it just looks like an absolute joke, the whole thing, and there's absolutely no real leeway that's being made. Like there's no actual advancement. It's really tough, and it's
Yeah.
not just. Sometimes when I talk about that in my YouTube videos, people will be really quick to be like, "Oh, you're so negative, or you're contributing to the problem." And it's like, look, this isn't just a maybe this is happening. You can see a video online and make an opinion out of it, but when you are actually in the industry and you see it unfolding in front of your own eyes, yeah, I'm able to actually comment on it from a factual standpoint. That yeah, it took a year and a half for this one project to get approval because of 1 foot of grass beside the property line. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like these types of things shouldn't happen. And it's also a lot of my friends and family find it really like annoying. I'm like a broken record because I'm always talking about the US and how efficient it is. And put social issues aside, from a capitalist standpoint, and actually having the country evolve at a much quicker pace. I go to the US all the time. I was in Florida less than a month ago. It's mind-blowing how much more efficient things are
Mhm.
on every level of your life: taxation, the infrastructure, the amount of property stock, the price of properties.
Yeah.
And then you come back here and you're like, why am I coming back here and paying 750K for a house? It's truly a question that a lot more people are asking themselves, and people are starting to really consider, is this actually worth it? Truly.
Yeah.
So
Just to speak to numbers on that too, you had over 400,000 Canadian born citizens leave the country last year. And then not to
not
mention,
surprised.
like we get DMs all the time. And like this is where you say, like, it's important to understand things when you're actually boots on the ground. So like I do this every single day, especially with a focus on real estate. The amount of DMs that we get of people, especially like of Indian descent, saying, "Yeah, I tell all my friends not to come to Canada. I just had 3 friends come
Oh,
here,
really?
get master's degrees, and leave because India is getting way better at with their economy and with their job market. So we've focused all of our resources on killing oil, not mining lithium as an example, natural gas, we're not exporting it. We've killed these productive parts of our economy that are so important because if you have a productive economy, you have people who are happy, they want to stay here, they want to contribute. But when you have so much of your GDP locked up in real estate, when real estate goes south, or if it does go south, we're going to have a huge problem, right? It's like if Canadian real estate actually really crashed, it would be
That's
like the
huge.
stock market crashing in the States, right? Because in the States, everyone has their wealth in these companies. Like Microsoft, as an example, has the same market cap as the whole TSX. So the TSX isn't nothing big, but there's so much billions and billions of dollars in Canadian real estate where we're just not productive. We aren't putting our resources somewhere where it's going to
For
create
sure.
more jobs, like oil and gas. Like it's true that we are importing oil from dictatorship countries rather than producing it here and exporting it, creating jobs, creating more tax money, and creating a better GDP for Canadians.
So for the GDP and like net worth tied up in real estate, I'm pretty sure last time I looked at some of the numbers, it was something like staggering. I think it was like 70% of most people's net worth in Canada, or maybe even more, is tied up in real estate. You probably have more data and information about this, though. Are these numbers on a relative basis now versus before the pandemic, or is this really as a result of most people's net worth having skyrocketed from 100% appreciation on their asset, even though they make 50K a year type of thing? Do you know, or
I don't know those numbers off the
are
top
you
of my head,
okay?
how much it is, but there's no doubt like people who got into the market like way before this, especially before COVID, and they sold. Like my dad did the same thing. Like he sold at the peak of the market, in a place close to Toronto, and he bought it for like 300,000. So you can imagine the return that he
Yeah,
made.
for
Same with
sure.
my brother. My brother had he bought a property with a partner. It didn't work out, and he made a lot of money when we sold it. And what he thinks, what when I was talking to him about it, he thinks that he's like, I should just buy another property and do it again. And I was like, well, you got lucky once
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're going to get lucky twice, right? Like, so that's the mindset of Canadians, is that like real estate just goes on this rocket ship, which is a problem, right? Because housing
Yeah, yeah,
shouldn't be a rocket ship. Like it's a necessity. You need housing. It's like, food has gone up a lot, but it's like if food keeps going up on this rocket ship, eventually people will have nowhere to eat. And we're seeing the repercussions of it. There's been more homeless people in Canada than ever before, right? So you're
sure.
seeing drug addiction. You're seeing everything rise for the worse because the cost of living has gone so much up, and we're not becoming as productive. Because when you look at GDP per capita, we are so much less productive than the average person in the States. And
Oh
my
yeah,
opinion
yeah.
is
It's
that
not even
there's no
funny.
opportunity. Yeah, there's no opportunity here other than if you get into
There,
banking or
there really
sales.
isn't.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to touch upon there. Let's speak about the opportunity thing first. Um, so I'm 27. All right. Most of my friends that I've been friends with for forever, okay, have like let's say since high school or even before, have finished university and their studies in the past 3 4 years. Okay, all of them work for the federal government
Wow.
or they're accountants. All of them. Literally all of them. So when you think about that question of the opportunity, right? And I'm not saying that as that's a bad thing. Like that's great. If they're going to take the opportunity, go for it. I just mean from a standpoint of economic output in a country, that is where the young people I know are going to work. So yeah, there's very little opportunity, right? And I've always been an entrepreneur like my whole life. I've always had businesses here and there. And the reason why I'm saying that is because right now I took advantage of, let's say, a YouTube channel and real estate that happened to do really well during the pandemic and before, right? But I was opportunistic on that and I got lucky because I was doing it in the first place. If I had to restart right now today though, truly, and I think about this every once in a while, I don't know what I would do. Like, actually, it would be really difficult because there are very, very few jobs. Okay. I studied finance and then a bit of marketing as well in university. One of my girlfriend's friends, she's a does marketing. It took her a year to get a job. She lives in Oakville area, right? A
Oh
year
yeah.
to get a job in her field. Like
Wow.
that's crazy, you know? So where do you go? There's no private industry here. In my region, everyone's either a builder, like they do construction, or they're an accountant, or they work for the federal government. Like, how do we have economic output as a nation if those are the industries? There's no new innovation. There is, but like not to the same level, you
No,
know?
for sure.
So yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, people. Well,
Yeah.
if you had to start over, what would I do? I would go and I would study coding, and I would go try and get a job in the States for one of these big tech companies because the margins are
Sure. I meant in
incredible.
Canada, staying in
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah. No, I know. I
I meant
that's
staying
what
in
I meant.
Canada. Like, I
What are you gonna do in
yeah,
Canada?
I would leave. I
Yeah,
would
like
literally leave. And I
even to
joke
get it.
about this all the time with my girlfriend where I'm like, if shit hits the fan, like I'm selling everything and I'm moving to another country where the cost of living is a tenth,
Tenth.
let alone the
Yeah.
US, which would be awesome as well. Like I was saying earlier, I was just in Florida, and it's like it's shocking because most people here watch the news on CBC and all that, and they're jaded as to how they think. And then when you actually say how things are, you're a weird conspiracy theorist and
Yeah.
you're fucking crazy. It's like, no, I was just at Target in the US and 12 eggs costs $1.20. A
Yeah.
brick of cheese costs $2. A brick of cheese for me is $7 at my local grocery store.
It's
Like, it's crazy,
insane.
the
It's
cost. It's
insane.
astronomical. Like a full grocery, like doing groceries over there for a week cost us like $100 in the US, 130 converted to Canadian.
Yeah.
That here is literally 250 or more in
Pro-
Canadian dollars. It's
Probably
it's
more. Yeah.
wild.
It's wild. And it's
Yeah, more.
honestly, it's because of we are the land of oligopolies. There's no competition in this country. We kill competition. You look at your
Yeah.
cell phone bill, there's six providers, your big banks. There's six providers, and that
Yep.
ultimately it gives them pricing power where even the grocery stores, all these stores that you see, most of them are owned by one big one. It's like Rogers and Fido. Like they're
Oh,
the same thing. Yeah. It's like,
yeah. Oh, for
yeah,
sure. They're all
there's
the
no
same. It's
difference,
it's
right?
Virgin, Rogers, and TELUS,
Yeah.
essentially, and
It,
Bell. There's
and
like
Bell.
four. That's
Yeah.
it.
And it's
Yeah.
why is my phone
Yeah.
bill $100? It's because they can, right? Like they literally can. Same with the big banks.
Yeah.
Why don't we have 30-year mortgages? Because the big banks, they don't have to give you 30-year mortgages. They can do why do all
And even
your
25, it's every 5 years,
yeah,
max every 5 years you're renewing it. So like my house is 1.8% locked. And in 2 years, I'm just gonna get wrecked,
yeah.
like literally it's gonna be huge. Wasn't able to lock in a 30-year mortgage. And yeah, it's really unfortunate, but that's just how it is. And like I think a lot of younger people are getting, their eyes open to this. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm
You're
30. I'm
you're in your
30.
30s?
Yeah, yeah, just
You're
turned
30,
30.
okay, so
Yeah.
I'm 27. I think a lot of people our age are really starting to realize this, but man, the boomers, like, absolutely just don't wanna hear it. They don't wanna hear
No,
that
not at
Canada's
all.
going the wrong way. Everyone in my family who's above the age of 40 is just like, "Dude, you're so annoying. Shut the hell
Yeah.
up. Canada's still amazing," and it's like, it's because you have a different viewpoint of it because your house is paid off and you bought it 20, 30 years ago and you make 170K a year. And
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like it's a different standpoint than people who are coming out of university or who are coming to the country for the first time. And your group of people that you're involved with aren't people who are, newer or younger and struggling to make something of themselves in the country. But a lot more people are having a hard time doing that in Canada. It's just that you don't see it as much when you're in certain suburbs and communities and stuff. But when you're actually boots on the ground in a certain industry, like I see it all the time,
yeah, me too.
So
Any young
it,
person in my area is getting a down payment from their family, right? There's no chance they're
and
buying
that's
a
if they're
house.
able to,
That's if they're able
so
to. So the people that aren't able, like people are like, you're a real estate agent. You want prices to be as high as you can, so then you can make the biggest commission check. My business would triple
well,
overnight.
no, not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah. My business would
Yes,
triple
but at the
overnight
same
if
time,
young people could afford it, right? If all my friends could get into the
exactly,
market,
that's what I was
yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could triple the amount of volume that I do easily. But I know so many people that have to rent because they can't qualify for the mortgage, let alone get the down payment of, Chris, $200,000 down payment on $1 million house.
No,
So
exactly. It's
this is where
tough.
we're
So yeah, so I usually recommend most people like there's so little you can do, right? Like most people want a magic sort of solution. There's so little you can do. Pair up with someone. If you don't have a partner and you can't split it, that's tougher if you want to buy a house and not an investment property. But I always say put 5% down. Most people, and that's like you can take it or leave it. But at the end of the day, on a million, well, you can't put 5% down on a million. But let's say 500,000, you put 5% down. The difference between saving that, even though yeah, you're paying a mortgage premium, fair enough. But if you want a house, the difference between saving 25K versus 100K for most people is forever.
yeah,
Like literally they won't be
lifetime.
able to ever get that. And
Yeah.
by the time they do, the house will be worth even more. So it's just this cat and mouse sort of game. So if you really want to get in, you have to sort of bite the bullet somewhere, like there's
Yeah,
always going to be something that's not optimal to get in and buy. Um,
for sure.
but as
For
long as
sure.
you're making something relatively strategic that's in your means, then even though it's really hard to see where Canada is going to go in the next 10 to 20 years in terms of housing and prices, if it doesn't crash, which hopefully it wouldn't, because then that would be detrimental for the entire country and everyone in it. But if it just continues even going up a steady pace of even 1 or 2% a year, then there's no optimal time to buy. You just need to have some pluses and some minuses in the deal and just live with those and try to ride through it. And once interest rates come down, refinance, get a lower rate, and try to pay down as much as you can. That's
Yeah,
really
that,
what you
that
can
that's
do.
huge too. Like especially investing in real estate, it's looking at other markets basically, right? It's going to Gatineau, it's going to
Yeah.
Sudbury, it's going to, we have some people in Hamilton and St. Catharines where the numbers they're tight. Trust me, they're tight, but they make more sense than areas like Oakville, Burlington, Mississauga, Toronto.
I mean,
Uh,
Oakville is just ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my hometown.
Oakville is
It
just
hurts.
completely unaffordable.
Yeah, it hurts,
Yeah.
man. It hurts.
Yeah.
Like
It's messed up.
you see the area you grew up in and the average home is 2.5 million, 3 million bucks. And you're like, it's probably never gonna happen. And it sucks, but it's
So, question for you, because
yeah.
you're primarily your bread and butter, like for your income, is real estate broker.
Yeah, so I'm a sales
Yeah.
agent.
Okay.
Where I make
Okay.
other money, I do own a property and I actually invest quite heavily in private mortgages. So that's where
Okay.
some of my income comes in. Yeah, people are like, why do you buy privates? I like cash flow. I enjoy the monthly check that I get. And a lot of the time, the private mortgages that we do, they're people who just can't get money from the bank, right? They want to do something to
For
their
sure.
home. They want to buy another investment property. So for me, when I see that loan to value of 80%, I see the appraisal on the home, I do my homework on it. For me, it makes more sense to put my money there for the time being. And like you said, I don't know Gatineau, Quebec, right? Like the only areas that I really know are the ones that I work in. So when I can make on 50 grand, I can make about 600 bucks a month in the private market. So
That's
it's
nice.
like,
That's
yeah,
good.
it's nice. It's a good return. It pays into my PREC, which is my real estate corporation. It's my business, so I don't pay income tax like I would. And then I really just try and let it compound. Like I really don't touch it. So yeah, mostly I'm a sales agent. I do the podcast obviously, and then I invest in the private side of Canadian real estate and second mortgages, and sometimes it's first mortgages. But yeah, I've referred a lot of people along who wanted to buy an investment property. And I was like, hey, here's another avenue. I could go make 10, 15 grand on the commission. But in my heart, I can't do it. These numbers are negative. You're going to be stressed out. Here's another avenue
And
you can
that's
go
fair.
to.
That's actually great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You're not, screwing people and you're trying to build long-term ties. Where I was going with that question
yeah. Yeah.
though
Go ahead.
is, considering that, really, because I considered a while ago, hey, maybe I should get my real estate license. It was kind of a slow period for some other things. And then I was just kind of like, well, you know what? I don't really want to be, even though I know the market really well, then you're tied to that market,
Yeah.
So would you ever consider moving out of there or not really? Because
Yeah.
how can you apply that to another market? That's the problem that I always saw. Like there's real estate agents in my region that are number one or number two in Canada. They sell 1,000 homes a year, right? But they go 2 hours south, they're absolutely nobody's. No one knows who they are, and their business is zero. So you're tied to one region, and that's what was always difficult for me
Yeah. Yeah.
to wrap my head around.
You're so right. I'm literally stuck here in my area. I could go somewhere else and work, but I've built up my business over 8 years. So I have to start again. One thing that I do know in my head, because if real estate agents become obsolete, AI takes us over. That's always the the scare that people talk about. I know how to sell. I learned how to sell and I learned how to build a business, so I can do it again. And
Okay.
plus, I know I manage my money really well. I don't live outside my means like a lot of realtors do. I've been, I learned from the beginning because I got into real estate when I was 21. I started selling houses. I can't even believe it.
Okay.
But yeah, I just
Yeah,
learned how
it's
to
young.
budget, and I watch guys like you, right? I like talking about finance, and I spend every day learning about the economy and stuff like that. And I find money fascinating. So for me, it's just like it comes naturally. Versus, I know a lot of people just don't care, right? Like I said this on my podcast. A lot of my friends are like, I'm so happy for the growth that you've had on your podcast, but like, I just don't give a shit about that stuff. And, for me,
For
it's just
sure. Well,
like,
most people don't actually.
yeah, it's
And
crazy.
most people don't care when you get into the nitty-gritty when you're of the financial topics, and that's why, I'm sure you've had a lot of your success, and maybe not. I'm just going out on a limb. I'm sure a lot of your maybe more recent success, maybe in the last 12 months, and best reels has been as a result of talking about political issues and stuff that will go and touch a lot more people, a larger pool of individuals, and then maybe they'll watch your other real estate stuff and get interested in it. But, whenever I talk about specific real estate investing stuff, like no one really cares, at the end of the day about
I
what's
know.
how you're starting to, and this is just like, this is my own experience, when I start talking about stuff like that, it's like, that's cool that you're doing that, but like, I'm never going to be a real estate investor. And at the end of the day, don't really care. So that's the whole game with doing online content. You have to like appeal, even though maybe you want to talk about the nitty gritty financial stuff because it's fascinating. Having to expand and talk about other things is sort of this game you have to play to attract more viewers. But
Yeah, yeah, it's very true.
yeah, and
Explain it to me
talking
like
about
in 10.
politics all the time can become so cynical. Like, oh, that's the
Oh
thing. It's
yeah,
just like,
it's
man,
a tough one. Yeah, and a lot of people,
yeah,
you talk about politics. Well, a lot of housing is driven by the federal government, right? It's driven by immigration levels. It's driven by I know the Bank of Canada is independent, but it's driven by interest rates. It's driven by how many housing starts, like
oh,
you
for
just
sure,
said, getting permits. It's very political. Where the reason why we've had success, I think, is because we say the tough things. And yeah, I get backlash all the time. People say horrible things in the comments, but I know that I'm helping more people than I'm hurting because of the following that I have. If I didn't have a following, then I would have
exactly,
stopped this a long time ago. But people find it beneficial. People find that wow, there's someone out there who's speaking about the tough things, and I can relate to that. And then you know what? In turn, I really think I give out way more information for free than I receive. So when people want to work with me because of that, then it pays off because I give way more than I ask for. But
for
when
sure.
in turn, when someone wants to work with me, they already know who I am based off the videos that I put out there. That's where my business starts to see a good ROI is when someone says, "Hey, I can't stop seeing your face talk about real estate. Come over and sell my house because I think you're the best person for the job." That's
For
when it all
sure.
pays off.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lead
yeah.
magnet, for real,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
So yeah, do I think I could do that in another place too if I like went to Gatineau or something? I think so. Like I think if I promoted myself as a Gatineau realtor in a couple of years, I could
I
be
meant
doing
more
that.
like Florida or something.
Yeah, Florida. Yeah. I know it's crossed my mind because I've been there a lot in my life. So I do like it there. Maybe one day.
Yeah, well, just in general. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, I still think there's massive opportunity. It's just the barrier to entry is just that much larger.
Mhm.
A lot of my success, like I'm not oblivious to the fact that there was luck involved with, buying stuff before the pandemic, which as a result of a lot of those properties gaining value and we sold them or refinanced them, we were able to take that capital and put it into new projects. Like, people will tell me that all the time, you were lucky or this or that. And it's like, yes, I definitely was to a certain extent, but had I not been interested in money and investing and all that and not taken any of those risks ahead of time, I never would have taken advantage of that appreciation, and then I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's the same with anything in life. Like if you're not actually implementing, then you're not able to be in a position to be lucky and take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. So yeah, bottom line, really tough for most people who don't own any assets. And I think the options are really small. You have to move out of major metropolitan areas, which if you're not willing to do that, then that's just kind of something you're gonna have to live with, um, and be
Yeah.
a renter for a really really long time, if not
Yeah.
ever. And it's only gonna get worse.
I think
So
that's
yeah,
I think that's an awesome place to end this here is yeah, try and learn every single day, get financially literate. And a lot of people that say I live paycheck to paycheck is because you're not spending your time learning. Once you kind of dive into
it's a hard truth to
the
accept,
game
but
of
it's
money,
just
yeah,
true.
money's a game and you just got to
Yeah,
try and learn it as best you can. So anyways, Griff, thanks so much for coming
exactly.
on. I really appreciate this. Where can people find you?
Mainly YouTube. That's like the main platform. Otherwise, Instagram and I'm trying to post a bit on Facebook. We'll see how that goes. But everywhere, just Griffin Milks, just my name. Yeah.
Griffin Milk's awesome. We'll definitely have that down below in the description. And yeah, Brooke couldn't be here this week. She's away in Florida, so she's enjoying some sunshine. So it was a
Oh, go
perfect time to
figure.
get
There
you
you
on. And
go.
yeah,
Florida.
I'd love to have you back on
Yeah,
sometime too, and maybe
for
later this year.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, we can do something.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm just gonna end the
Thank you.
recording, and we'll talk soon. Thanks again.